For decades, millions of people have been told that they have polycystic ovaries, only to find out that they don't have a single cyst. The name was wrong, the focus was narrow, and the care was incomplete. But as of May 2026, the game has changed. We are officially entering the era of PMOS. Today, we're discussing why this rebrand is key to unlocking better metabolic care and ending the diagnostic delay. This is the Kick Cramp Sass podcast. Let's talk about the future of your hormones.
They been cramping my style all week. Craving chocolate trees, checking pants, checking seeds, sipping herbal tea and fight for menstrual equity. Sheesh. Man, I kick cramps ass. 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 You're now tuned in to the Kick Cramps Ass podcast with your host, Brittany Walker, advocating for menstrual equity, period poverty, and womb wellness. New episodes on Menstruation Mondays.
Happy Menstruation Monday, everyone. I am your host, Brittany Walker, and I want you to take a deep breath with me before we dive in today. You are listening to Season 4, Episode 7, and this is an episode I truly believe is one for the history books. For nearly a century, since 1935 to be exact, the medical community has used the term Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, or PCOS. But for those same decades, the name has been a source of profound confusion, frustration, and frankly, medical gaslighting for millions of patients and clinicians alike. How many of you have been told that you have cysts on your ovaries, only to find out they aren't really cysts at all? How many of you have struggled with insulin resistance, hair loss, or chronic fatigue, only to be told that your ultrasound looks normal, so therefore you must be fine? The name was wrong, the focus was too narrow, and the care has been incomplete. But as of May 2026, the tides are officially turning. A major global movement highlighted just days ago, a landmark report by The Guardian has officially pushed for a systematic name change. We are moving away from the misnomers of PCOS and stepping into a new era of clarity with Polyendocrine Metabolic Ovarian Syndrome, or PMOS. Today, we are deep diving into the why behind this historic shift. We are moving past the surface level focus on cysts and looking at the rigorous research that proves that this has always been a whole body metabolic crisis, not just an ovary problem. We're going to break down what this name change actually means for the way you move, the way you eat, and most importantly, the way you advocate for yourself. We'll discuss how the shift to PMOS perfectly aligns with our biopsychosocial model, moving us away from a broken part mentality and towards a whole system approach. Whether you've been living with this diagnosis for 10 years or you're just starting to connect the dots between your hormones and your metabolism, today's conversation is designed to give you the vocabulary you need for your next doctor's visit. It's time to stop treating the symptom and start supporting the system. Let's get into it. Let's ground the new terminology in our I am manifestation. We like to kick off each episode with the I am power statement, with I representing inspiration, A representing affirmations, and M representing manifestations. And the I am power statement for today is, I am more than a diagnosis. I honor my body's complex metabolic wisdom, and I claim a future where my health is seen through a lens of wholeness, not just symptoms. And you know we like to give a quote of the day. And today's is, a name change is a change in perspective. By centering metabolism, we stop treating the symptom and start supporting the system. And that was pulled from Clinical Health Insight 2026. Now, before we dive in, we're going to go ahead and take a good old sip of our cramp elixir, cut to our first commercial break, and we will be right back with you. Tired of clunky remote recordings? Level up with Riverside FM Pro. Get studio quality audio and video, effortless editing with powerful AI tools, and seamless live streaming and collaboration. Become a pro of Riverside.fm and unlock the full potential of your content. Sign up today and make your voice heard. Visit the link in the description of this episode to discover more. Now, back to the show. Welcome back from that commercial break. We hope that you enjoyed it. Let's look at the science because to understand where we're going, we have to look at where we've been stuck. The term Polycystic Ovary Syndrome was coined back in 1935. Think about that. We have been using a clinical label developed nearly a century ago to describe a condition that affects 1 in 10 menstruators today. But here is the kicker, and the reason this rebrand is so vital. The cysts seen on ultrasounds aren't actually cysts at all. They are underdeveloped follicles, tiny sacs where an egg should have been released but wasn't. As noted in the recent report by The Guardian, the name is misnomer that has led to decades of clinical confusion as many patients with the syndrome have no cyst at all, while many people with perfectly healthy endocrine systems do. This isn't just a matter of semantics, it's the root of a massive diagnosis gap. For decades, the medicinal gold standard for diagnosis relied so heavily on that ultrasound that it created a narrow reproductive only lens. Doctors would see a patient presenting with clear metabolic red flags, insulin resistance, rapid weight changes, hair loss, and irregular menstrual cycles. But if that ultrasound came back of cysts, the patient was often told, "You're fine." Or even worse, the focus was placed solely on fertility as if the only reason to treat the condition was to achieve pregnancy. As The Guardian highlights, this narrow focus meant that metabolic risks such as type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease was often secondary thoughts in a clinical setting that prioritized reproductive outcomes over systematic health. By officially transitioning to PMOS, Polyendocrine Metabolic Ovarian Syndrome, we are finally aligning the name with the biological reality. Let's break down why this specific vocabulary changes the game for your advocacy. Polyendocrine. This acknowledges that the syndrome doesn't start and end with the ovaries. It involves a complex dance of multiple hormones, including insulin, androgens, and cortisol. It tells your doctor that we need to look at the pancreas and the adrenal glands, not just the reproductive system. Metabolic. This is the heart of the rebrand. It centers the fact for the vast majority of us. This condition is rooted in insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction. According to the latest research, up to 80% of those with the condition have underlying insulin resistance regardless of their body mass index or BMI. By putting metabolic in the name, we ensure that the blood sugar management and metabolic panels become the standard of care, not an optional add on. Ovarian. This keeps that critical reproductive link, but it finally places the ovaries within a larger systematic context. It acknowledges that the ovaries are responding to a metabolic environment rather than being the broken part that caused the problem in the first place. When we change the name, we change the search parameters. We change the way that researchers get funding, and we change the way that insurance companies cover your lab work. We are moving away from a 1930s understanding and towards a 2026 standard of excellence. Why does a clinical name change matter so deeply for your mental health? Because for decades, menstruators living with this condition have felt completely gaslit by the medical system. With the name of your diagnosis fundamentally contradicts your actual lived experience, it creates profound psychological distress. You feel isolated. You feel like your body is an unresolved mystery, and you begin to question your own reality. By shifting from PCOS to PMOS, we aren't just updating a medical textbook. We are validating the psychological and social pillars of the biopsychosocial model. We are finally connecting the dots between the biological chemistry and your mental well being. Let's break down exactly how this rebrand radically shifts the psychological and the social landscape from every single one of us. Now, number one, shifting the narrative to reduce stigma. The old name immediately sends your mind to a scary structural place. I have cysts on my reproductive organs. That language induces anxiety. It makes people feel broken, sterile, or like they are ticking time bombs for surgery. But PMOS completely reframes the narrative. It moves the conversation away from the fear of scary cysts and anchors it in the reality of a manageable metabolism. When you understand that your body is dealing with an endocrine and metabolic shift, it takes away the existential dread. It removes the shame of an invisible reproductive failure and replaces it with an actionable biological reality. You aren't broken. Your metabolic thermostat just needs to be recalibrated. Number two, the second massive shift is reclaiming your voice for better advocacy. How many times have you gone to an appointment, laid out your symptoms, and felt completely dismissed because your doctor's only tool was a pelvic ultrasound? The era of PMOS changes your clinical currency. You can now walk into a clinic, look your provider in the eye, and ask for a comprehensive metabolic panel with clinical authority. You no longer have to beg them to look beyond your ovaries because metabolic is literally in the name. The standard of care must expand. You have the right to demand that they look at the real drivers of your energy and inflammation. We are talking about calculating your homeostatic model assessment of insulin resistance, or HOMA-IR, to look at insulin sensitivity, tracking your fasting insulin, and analyzing your full lipid profiles. This rebrand hands the microphone back to the menstruator. And then number three, a radical reframe for holistic care. The change completely revolutionized holistic care. Under the old PCOS umbrella, menstruators were consistently given a deeply toxic social narrative. You just need to lose weight for vanity or take the birth control pill until you want to have a baby. It was reductionist and it left menstruators feeling entirely unsupported. By centering PMOS, we validate a lifestyle first approach to medicine. It fundamentally encourages a focus on nutrition and mindful movement as primary tools for metabolic stabilization, rather than dynamic punishment for your body weight. This is where our physical practices like somatic movement, targeted yoga or Pilates, and deep diaphragmatic breath work move from being fitness routines to actual clinical tools. We know that deep breath work lowers cortisol, and when you lower cortisol, you reduce the stress induced glucose spikes that aggravate insulin resistance. We know that low impact resistance training like Pilates builds lean muscle mass, which directly increases glucose transporter cells, allowing your body to process insulin more efficiently. This rebrand takes the focus off of aesthetic compliance and places it squarely on physiological peace. It proves that you are the conscious architect of your internal climate and you finally have a diagnosis that honors the whole house. Now we are going to cut to our next commercial break and we will be right back with you.
Do you want? Fly, wanna fly. Do you wanna fly? Wanna fly. Let go of all the things that hold you down. Used to be so
to the show. Welcome back from that commercial break. We hope that you enjoyed it. Now that we understand the clinical reality of PMOS, let's pivot from theory to execution. If this is a whole body endocrine and metabolic syndrome, our treatment plan cannot simply be a pill designed to suppress ovulation. We have to look at how we build structural care from the inside out. I want to share 3 core holistic protocols designed for metabolic stabilization, followed by the exact clinical blueprint, the questions you need to ask your doctor at your next visit to ensure you are getting complete care. When we talk about managing PMOS holistically, we are looking at lifestyle interventions as true clinical tools. So, first, the power of low impact resistance training. Traditional high intensity interval training, or HIIT, can trigger a massive surge in cortisol. For an unstable endocrine system, that extra cortisol tells your liver to dump more glucose into your bloodstream, worsening insulin resistance. Instead, we look to targeted Pilates and slow control resistance training. As we mentioned earlier in the show, Pilates builds lean, deep muscle mass. Muscle tissue is our primary metabolic sink. It increases glucose transporter cells, allowing your body to pull sugar out of your blood and utilize it for energy without needing an excess surge of insulin. Next, the first food sequential eating method. Nutrition for PMOS isn't about restriction or caloric deprivation. It is about glucose sequencing. When you eat a meal, the order in which food hits your digestive tract dictates your metabolic response. Always lead with fiber and non starchy vegetables first to create a vicious mesh in the small intestines. Follow that with your proteins and healthy fats, and save your complex carbohydrates for the very end of the meal. This sequence significantly slows down gastric emptying and blunts the glucose spike, reducing the subsequent insulin demand in your pancreas. And then third, somatic breathwork for core inflammation. We cannot ignore the polyendocrine part of this name, which heavily involves the adrenal glands. Chronic stress keeps your system in a sympathetic fight or flight state. Deep diaphragmatic breathwork, specifically extending your exhales longer than your inhales, stimulates the vagus nerve and activates the parasympathetic nervous system. This drop in stress hormones directly downregulates systematic inflammation and helps stabilize morning fasting glucose levels. Now, while these holistic daily rituals are foundational, we also need to partner with an aligned medical team. When you walk into your endocrinologist or gynecologist's office for your next appointment, you are no longer asking them to check your ovaries. You are asking them to evaluate your systematic metabolism. Here are the 4 precise authoritative questions you should bring to your clinical team. First, given the shift towards recognizing this condition as polyendocrine metabolic ovarian syndrome, can we order a comprehensive metabolic panel that includes fasting insulin and HOMA-IR rather than just a standard fasting glucose test? Why does this matter? Your fasting blood sugar can look completely normal for years while your pancreas is working overtime, pumping out massive amounts of insulin to keep it that way. Testing fasting insulin is the only way to catch early stage insulin resistance. Number 2, how does my current lipid profile and cardiovascular metabolic data look, and what steps are we taking to protect my long term metabolic health beyond just regulating my menstrual cycle duration? Now, why does this matter? This forces the clinician to move past the reproductive lens and look at your cardiovascular risk factors, ensuring they treat PMOS as a lifelong metabolic reality rather than a temporary cycle inconvenience. Number 3, if you are recommending hormonal birth control or medication, is it being used to treat the root endocrine dysfunction, or is it masking the symptoms? And how will this specific medication impact my underlying insulin sensitivity? Why this matters? Some traditional synthetic progestins used in oral contraceptives can actually worsen insulin resistance. You want to ensure that any pharmaceutical intervention doesn't inadvertently complicate your metabolic goals. And number four, are you open to partnering with a registered nutritionist or incorporating lifestyle metrics like stress management and strength building into our official clinical treatment plan? Why is this important? This establishes a collaborative care model. It signals to your doctor that you view your lifestyle choices as evidence based medicine that runs parallel to their clinical oversight. Remember, advocacy isn't about being confrontational. It's about arriving with a clinical currency by shifting your questions from "Do I have cysts" to "How is my metabolism functioning?" You completely change the caliber of care you receive. You are the architect of your health, and you have every right to demand a blueprint that covers the entire foundation. Now, we are going to cut to our final commercial break, and we will be right back with you. Periods got you down? Kick cramps to the curb with Pilates for Periods. Our online program combines targeted Pilates, soothing yoga, calming meditation, and breathwork to help you manage your menstrual cycle naturally. Feel stronger, calmer, and more in control. Reclaim your comfort. Visit Pilates for Periods YouTube page linked in the description of this episode and start your journey to a more manageable cycle today. Now, back to the show. Welcome back from that commercial break. We hope that you enjoyed it. Now, as we bring this historic episode to a close, let's take a collective breath and step into our final space of reflection. Today, we didn't just discuss a change in medical vocabulary. We witnessed a paradigm shift in how menstruators' health is validated, researched, and treated on a global scale. If your head is spinning with all the new terminology, don't worry. I want you to ground everything we covered today into a precise, actionable recap so you can carry this knowledge forward with total confidence. Now, the core takeaways: we are leaving the misnomer behind. For nearly a century, the label PCOS has forced us to look at the endocrine issue through a restrictive reproductive only lens. We now know that the cysts aren't cysts at all, they are simply underdeveloped follicles. The old name kept us trapped in a diagnostic gap that prioritized fertility outcomes over your day to day systematic vitality. The PMOS era is systemic. By shifting to the Polyendocrine Metabolic Ovarian Syndrome, the medical community is finally acknowledging that your ovaries are not operating in a vacuum. This condition is a multi system, multi hormonal experience heavily driven by insulin resistance, cortisol production, and metabolic dysfunction. Your mental health is validated. Under our biopsychosocial model, this name change directly repairs the psychological weathering of medical gaslighting. Shifting the language from scary cysts to manageable metabolism reduces existential dread, provides you with the clinical currency to demand comprehensive lab panels, and shifts our treatment goals from aesthetic compliance to physiological peace. And lastly, movement and nourishment are medicine. We reestablished that managing PMOS holistically means using lifestyle interventions are true clinical tools. From utilizing low impact Pilates to build lean muscle mass that acts as a metabolic sink, to using sequential eating to blunt glucose spikes and leading into somatic breath work to lower adrenal cortisol. You are the conscious architect of your internal climate. Now, the historic transition to PMOS represents so much more than a clinical text update. It is a profound beacon of hope for the future of reproductive and metabolic health. By shattering the outdated cis-centric framework that has isolated patients for nearly a century, we are laying the foundation for a medical system where the staggering 70% of menstruators currently going undiagnosed can finally be seen, validated, and treated years early. This systematic reframing strips away the narrow, high pressure focus on fertility outcomes and hands the keys of autonomy directly back to the menstruator. transforming them from a passive bystander struggling with a misnamed disease into an empowered advocate who understands their body's whole system chemistry. As we look down the horizon, the impact of PMOS will redefine reproductive medicine by integrating endocrinology, metabolic care, and mental health from the very first visit. It signals an era where lifestyle medicine, somatic practices, and clinical treatment run hand in hand to heal the whole person. This is our moment to reclaim our bodies, demand comprehensive care, and build a future where our biology is met with precise science, deep compassion, and absolute sovereignty. Now we have Pilates for periods, which you saw in our last commercial break, which offers Pilates, yoga, meditation, and breath work. So that can assist you all across the board with the somatic breath work movements, the meditation, the somatic and mindfulness practices, also assisting with the low impact yoga or even the Pilates to help build that lean muscle mass. Now, as far as the nutrition side is concerned, we are a nutritionist, so if you need any assistance, we will have the information in the description of this episode if you would like to sign up for a consultation or even indulge into our menstrual therapy, where we can help you with any of the issues that you may be experiencing related to your biological, your psychological, or your social matters. Now, thank you all for tuning in into this landmark episode of Kick Cramp's Ass. We are always grateful for you for choosing to be active advocates for your health, your biology, and your collective dignity. Now, if you have any questions or concerns, we are still accepting listeners' mail. Feel free to comment on this episode, or for a more intimate or private conversation, you can email us at contact@kickcrampsass, which is also listed in the description of this episode. Now, as you step out into the rest of your day, remember that your body is not a broken machine. It is a complex, beautiful ecosystem that simply deserves to be understood by the correct name. We are sending an abundance of gratitude to our community. Stay mindful, stay moving, and we will see you during our next episode. Until then, we manifest a positive, productive, and peaceful remainder of your day, your week, and your wellness journey ahead. Peace.